Good morning. I want to entertain the question this morning, does God exist? And we're not going to use the Bible. We'll use a little bit of it at the end. But I want to look at the design of different things. And we'll look at a whale. We'll look at a glowworm. We'll look at a few things. Dragonfly. We'll look at some of those things. And I think when you think about the design that is in everything on this earth, there's no possible way that it could happen by chance. It's just impossible. Well, I was standing on top of a mountain in Colorado. Here's a picture of it. And you just wonder, it's like, where all these things come from? Where does everything come from? Many look up into the sky. You see the stars. You see, the one thing I asked when I was up here is like, you see the stones there just piled on top of each other. This is way 10,000 elevation, I think, or something like that. Maybe it's 14,000. I don't know. It's way up there, but a long walk. But it's like, how did all those stones just piled up there? It's just crazy. Maybe there were some volcanoes that exploded whenever during the time of the flood. And maybe that made the rocks all come from down in the earth. I don't know. But anyway, it's just amazing, the earth and how that the earth, I just don't understand why people would say that it happened by chance. You can look at the design of animals, and you can look at the design of trees and organisms and fish, and just on and on and on. You can list out so many things, and there's so much design in every single one of those. You can look at flowers and insects and animals. They're just so incredible. And people ask the question, it's like, how did they all get here? Where did they come from? Was it just an accident? Did it happen by chance? Was it a product of random chance, or is there another explanation? And I think we'll see it is definitely not random chance that put all these things together. Many people, you've probably read it in school. I know we studied this in school, the Big Bang Theory. And I don't know if they still teach that in school or not, but they teach it a million years ago, millions and millions of years ago. There was a bang and of a speck, and where did the speck come from? Where did the energy for the bang come from? I mean, there's just so many questions in this theory that many taught as not theory, but as actual way it happened. But anyway, teachers might have taught you that millions of years ago, somehow or another, a speck of life popped up over 3 billion years, finally became a living, reproducing cell, and then it became everything we see today. I mean, that's just a one-sentence version. They might have taught you that the lizard, the mouse, the dog, the cat, the people, fish, plants, trees, everything we see came from this one little speck as big as a pencil lead. And you know, as young children, some children may have believed that as they were taught. But think about this. What do you see any animals living today that don't have lungs or don't have hearts? I mean, how did these animals even grow to be a full-grown animal if they were in parts, if they were growing and evolving? How did they get from being alive and come from something that is parts? I mean, we don't see anything around that is put together in parts where they might have. What happens if you take the lung out of an animal? It's going to die. What happens if you take a heart out of an animal? Well, then how in the world did they evolve into something having a heart and a lung and all the different things in the design that they have today? There is a law of logic, the law of law and rationality. This law states that a person should accept as true only those conditions for which there is adequate evidence. You know, they say there's evidence of the Big Bang, but there's no really evidence of the Big Bang ever occurring. They just don't have any. It's just all speculation. There's also a law of teleology. And this is what we're going to be discussing today. This law affirms that where there is design, there must be a designer. There was a well-known, influential man called William Paley. This was in 1802 is when he wrote this. in his work, The Natural Theology. So this is there. If there is design in something, then there must be a designer. Even people that do not believe God understands that to get a poem, you must have a poet. To get a house, you must have someone to build it. To get a painting, you must have somebody to paint it. To get a car, someone must design it, build it, and make it run. We need some metal in our sign out there, and somebody's got to design that, put that together, and weld it up there so we can mount the signs up. It's not just going to happen. So the real question is, did the universe evolve over time from a small speck of something, or did God design it and create it, and create the universe? You know, many unbelievers have to admit that design demands a designer. It comes to design of nature or the universe, they say there is not sufficient evidence to establish the existence of a great designer. I mean, you look around, you can see the things that have been designed. Why not an animal or a creature or an organism or us? But think about a computer. Suppose you're camping out in the field and you wake up one morning and you found this brand new functioning laptop right outside your tent. Well, where did it come from? Did it evolve out of a tree maybe? Or did somebody design that laptop and build it and brought it and put it out there? Computers are complex machines. You can see here's a circuit board that's on there. I remember whenever I was, about 30 years ago when I worked for a computer company, one of the things I really wanted to do was go visit Compaq Computer and tour their facility where they make computer system boards. I think, from what I understand, there were layers on top of layers on top of layers, and they had the chips all indwelled in those layers, and circuitry and wires all in those layers. Amazing. Those didn't just evolve out of something. They were carefully and designed and was created by a designer and a creator. Okay, let's look at the universe, or the Milky Way Galaxy. When you think about the galaxy, some of these numbers may be off a little bit. I did this research on some of this stuff, these numbers, a long time ago. This was actually the first sermon that I put together a PowerPoint for. This isn't the PowerPoint for it. I couldn't find it. But anyway, this information was from a while ago. But anyway, the Milky Way Galaxy we live in is over 100 billion stars. We're moving at the speed of light across the galaxy. It takes 100,000 years to get to the other side. If we were to draw a map to the next nearest star, it would be 4 miles wide. And if we were to draw a map to the center of the galaxy, it would be 25,000 miles wide. Just to put a map of the stars and how to get there. Not only is the size impressive, the design is even more impressive. Think about some of these things. The temperature inside the sun is estimated to be over 20 million degrees Celsius. The Earth is located the exact distance from the sun. If it were any closer to the sun or further away from the sun, the Earth would not sustain life. I mean, you can see where the sun is, that little speck in the universe, and you can see some of the things I was thinking of while I was sitting there. I was just thinking of my lesson, but as we move through space around this circle, rotating around, having to stay the same distance away from the sun and close to the sun. The planets have to be the same distance away from us. The moon has to be the same distance away from us. Anything changes. I mean, we're rotating and moving 1,000 miles an hour around the sun. Let's see. The Earth is rotating 1,000 miles an hour. We're moving 70,000 miles per hour, approximately 19 miles per second. And just from as we talk and have this lesson, we're going to be moving miles and miles through space. 600,000 miles per hour moving through space. In an orbit so large it estimates 220 million years just to complete a single orbit. I suppose we've never made a single orbit in this Milky Way Galaxy that we live in. If the earth is strayed away 1/8 of an inch, the earth would be incinerated, and if it strayed the path of 1/10 of an inch, we would be so far away from the sun that we would freeze to death. I mean, is that happen by chance? Is that, there's just no way. If the moon were moved closer to the earth, it would create tides twice a day that would reach 35 to 50 feet high over most of the earth. I lived in an area where there was hurricanes, and when a hurricane came in, I mean, you might have 10 or 12 foot. I could imagine 35. We couldn't sustain life in 35 to 50 feet high over the earth. The atmosphere surrounding the earth were thinner. Meteorites could strike the planet with greater force and frequency, causing worldwide devastation. What happens when a meteorite comes and hits the earth? Well, it's burned up before it gets to the earth. Is that just design, or would that happen by accident? Plants take in carbon dioxide and give off oxygen that we need to breathe. Well, isn't that something? We need oxygen, and the plants put off oxygen. And 90% of the oxygen comes from the plants in the seas. If the oceans were smaller, we soon would be out of air to breathe. I mean, just think about the design in the world. We could go on and talk about the design of the Milky Way Galaxy and the planets and the stars for days and still not finish. And the things that we can learn as we look at those things. You know, the earth is the exact diameter, is the exact amount of pressure, it has the exact tilt. The exact ocean water is here for us to breathe and puts off enough oxygen, exact weight, exact mass. I mean, did it happen by chance? Here's many people use this example of a junkyard. Many of our houses look like that. Got junk piled around. But anyway, they say that if a tornado were to hit our house or our junkyard, that it would build a plane. There would be a plane built out of your junk. Well, that's just absurd. There's no way that's going to happen. The cars smashing together, what's going to happen? It's just going to make a mess. And that's what they want to tell you that happened billions and billions of years ago, is these two specks of something might have hit each other and by chance and happened, and it turned into the design and the magnificent earth and world and universe that we have today. Just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Let's look at a few animals. Here's the whales. Whales are giant mammals that live in the ocean, and they must have air to breathe, right? They consume over 5,000 gallons of air per minute. 5,000 gallons, that's a lot. They can weigh up to 300,000 pounds. Their tongue alone can weigh as much as an elephant. That's pretty amazing right there. As far as we know, the whale is the biggest animal that is ever created, even bigger than most of the dinosaurs. I thought some of the dinosaurs might have been bigger than the whale, but as far as I know, they are not. They're very complex in design. Look at the fins that are on the whale. Those fins that are on the whale are kind of like an elephant's ears. Have you ever heard of an elephant's ears and what an elephant's ears do? Well, they're like air conditions. It keeps them cool. You ever seen a elephant flap their ears? Why are they flapping their ears? Well, it's cooling their body. It's cooling them. The humpback whale goes back and forth from shallow water to very deep water. What's the temperature of water when you get down deep? Well, it's changing a lot. The further you go deep, the colder it gets. So they have small blood vessels in these flippers, and they use these flippers to cool it down or warm it up. So as it moves through the water, it can cool itself down or heat itself up from the water. One of the amazing things that the humpback whale does is swim deep into the water in circles and blow massive amount of air bubbles around in the middle of a circle. So they swim around in a circle. They put these air bubbles in the as they swim, and it makes all these fish go to the center. And then what do? They go deep, and then they come up through the center, and then they eat those krill. They can eat over a ton of krill at a time. I mean, what would happen as we evolved? I mean, just think about that. Where was the krill that the whale had to eat? If the whale was created before the krill, it just doesn't make sense. How does a whale keep from drowning when they eat? Right? Because they got their They breathe oxygen just like we do. And when you think about a whale breathing oxygen, well, their mouth and their ears, our mouth and their nose isn't connected. Their mouth and where they breathe, they eat through their mouth and they breathe through in a different spot. So since it's not connected, they can open their mouth in the water and drink or eat their food under the water. I suppose that a dolphin may be kind of similar to that as well. So when you think about this whale, they have the ability to shut down part of their circulatory system and leave only their heart and brain and tail working while they eat. So you're talking about a lot of energy to use to swim through the water. I know in a boat, if you've got a motor boat, you've got a motor on it, it takes a lot of energy to push that boat through the water. Imagine a whale that's way bigger than your boat pushing itself through the water and the energy it would burn as it pushes itself through the water. There's also the whales use this communication device. They can communicate with each other over miles, kind of like where we got the submarine, where they were able to communicate and to look through the water using the radars and the different things the design of the submarine came from the design of the whales. And the way the whales send out a signal looking for prey. They ping something and then they wait to listen to how long the ping comes back, that kind of thing. Those principles, called sonar was the word there. So when you think about the whale, there's no possible way that it could be just put here by chance. You got all the design. There had to be a designer. It had to be a builder, and had to be the Almighty God. Evolution teaches that whales were once a land animal that decided to go back into the ocean. There's no evidence that a whale ever lived on the earth or on the land and moved into water. If there was some evidence of that, we would see something that evolved from whatever it was before and as it moved into a whale. Just doesn't make any sense. And you'd have to see that change for every single animal on this earth, every single organism on this earth. It's not here. There's another bird, and this is an amazing bird. It's called the Pacific golden plover. This is a Hawaiian name called Kolea. And this bird, most birds during winter, they fly south. And during the summer, they fly north. But the Pacific golden plover, he flies from Alaska to Hawaii. They cannot swim. Keep that in your mind. They cannot swim. They have 4 eggs that hatch in about 24 days. And after the baby chicks hatch, the parents embarks on a courageous and perilous journey, flying from Hawaii to Alaska. That's a long ways, right? That's 88 hours it takes them to fly from Alaska to Hawaii. The journey starts before the chicks are able to go. Keep that in mind, okay? The adults leave the chicks in Alaska, okay? There's an 88-hour flight nonstop because there's no land in between. When you fly from Alaska all the way to Hawaii, if you're flying on an airplane, whatever, but there's no land for this bird to land on and rest. But there's a problem, right? If you notice there, the bird burns 1 gram of energy per hour as it flies, right? Okay, how far do we have? We have 88 hours. So how many grams of energy do you need to fly from Alaska to Hawaii? You didn't know he was going to get a math test this morning, right? But you need 88 grams of food. You have to eat 88 grams of food for one bird to fly from Hawaii to Alaska. But how many grams of food do they eat before they leave? Only 70. They only eat 70 grams. As soon as they eat 70 grams of food, then they're able to leave. Why is that so? How do they make it there from Hawaii or from Alaska to Hawaii? And they fly back and forth, but they fly. They fly in formation. What happens when you fly in formation? They alternating leaders. If the leader stayed the leader the whole time, the leader would fall out into the sea after 70 grams. After they burn their 70 grams, they couldn't make it. So they alternate leaders, and they fly in formation, which breaks the airwaves and allows them to make it all the way to Hawaii. So pretty amazing bird that does that. And scientists still don't know how that they make it there. But remember that the babies stayed around in Hawaii. Well, after they consume 80 grams, or stayed around in Alaska, after they consume 80 grams of food, they're able to leave. Well, they've never been to Hawaii, so how do they know how to get there? That's what's amazing. Just imagine flying from Alaska to Hawaii, a bird. If you get off just by a little bit. Have you ever been out in the Gulf, or maybe out on a lake you can't see land? Well, if you're trying to go back to the same spot you left from, that's pretty hard. If you just veer just a little bit off, you're going to miss it. So these birds must fly directly to Hawaii, or they're going to miss Hawaii, and of course they would die, fall into the ocean. So pretty amazing that they're able to, those young birds are able to fly there, having never been there. So again, we see so much design in these birds, and you can go on and on about many different animals. Let's look at a couple more. Dragonfly. The dragonfly is pretty amazing. The dragonfly he's a remarkable hunter. He can swoop down on his prey going 20 miles an hour. That's pretty amazing. 20 miles an hour they can fly. They can spot a prey over 40 feet away. That's pretty amazing considering how small they are. I had one of those dragonflies bite me one time. I was holding on to it. That didn't feel too good, but it didn't hurt. Anyway, the dragonfly lives in the water sometimes up to 2 years, and they eat fish and tadpoles. And it's pretty remarkable. These tadpoles can put off a signal if there's a dragonfly larva trying to eat them. They put off a signal and warn the other larva or the other tadpoles. I mean, that happened by chance? Yeah. A dragonfly has the best eyes of any kind of insect. There might be over 30,000 eyes on one dragonfly. They have little tiny facets, and each one takes a little light in and a little bit of the image, which allow them to see extremely well. Look at this. If you remember this guy called Sikorsky, ever heard of the Sikorsky dragonfly helicopter? Well, it looks like a dragonfly when you look at that helicopter. Well, the design of the helicopter came from looking at the wings of a dragonfly. From what I understand, the dragonflies can fly both forwards and backwards, just like a helicopter can. They rotate their wings and are able to fly forwards and backwards, just like a helicopter does. Another thing to note on the dragonfly is they're frail. You ever try to hold a dragonfly and the wings break? They're so frail. Well, imagine a dragonfly flying at 20 miles an hour, and how do their wings stay together? Well, they have little channels that are built into there, 1/100th of an inch, that make them extremely strong. They're still not as strong as we are, but they're able to fly, and they have thicker tips on the wings so that they don't flutter as they fly. So just amazing, the design that we see in the dragonfly. Let's look at one more, the glowworm, sometimes called the kokuju beetle. You ever seen those fireflies? I know we used to put those fireflies in a jar. Man, they were really neat to put them in there and see the fireflies light up at night. Maybe you don't do that anymore these days. Young people, I don't know if they still like to play with fireflies or not, but I did when I was young. Fireflies, they're amazing. But anyway, these glowworms, you can see them out on lakes. I think this picture might have came from Mexico or somewhere. I don't know where it was. But anyway, these animals are able to use, it's called cold light. And they use 100% of the energy in the light. And if you think about our light bulb, it only uses 4% of the energy. The rest, it produces heat. You ever touched a light bulb and you know how hot it gets? Well, it's only using 4% to light up, and then the rest of it is putting off energy and putting off heat. Well, the glowworm, South America is where these are from, and they a lot of times they would put them in a basket and walk through the woods, and it would give them light to see. They mix two substances together called luciferin and lucifer. I think it's luciferous. Anyway, those two are mixed together, and it makes the light. That's how the glowworms and the fireflies. That's the enzyme that are mixed together. When I was kind of researching this the other day. I was looking it up again, and it was interesting. I saw some stuff about COVID on there, COVID-19. So I guess some people were speculating that maybe that if you took the COVID-19 vaccine, you were going to be glowing like a glowworm. I don't know, but anyway, it was quite amusing. Some people were writing. But anyway, this luciferase has 1,000 amino acids, and scientists still can't reproduce that energy and that light, and to use that much light and to keep reproducing it. Another amazing thing about these glowworms is they if you go to South America and you see all these glowworms in trees, they're all lighting up at the same time and turning out, and it looks like a Christmas tree, where you have all the lights connected and they're able to turn on and off at the same time. How does that happen? Did that just happen by chance, or was that something put in the design of the glowworm? Here is a quote from the general theory of evolution about 14 billion years ago. All the matter in the universe was concentrated into one very dense, very hot region that may have been much smaller than a period on a page. For some unknown reason, this region exploded. That's what they want you to believe when you teach somebody evolution. There's a guy called Herbert Spencer. He was a philosopher, evolutionist. But anyway, he said, answering this question, where did matter come from? Well, these are the three possibilities. It either was spontaneously generated, where it just happened from nothing. And by the way, I was looking on something earlier. What is nothing? You know, they tell you that it can generate. Anyway, eternal. It was either eternal or it was created. So either that, and really to have this Big Bang or this whatever they say, really 1 and 2 would have to be what they would have to be teaching, because it would have to be spontaneously generated, or it would have to be eternal. Well, we believe that, of course, it was created. We'll see that a little bit later as we look in the Bible as we close, but they want you to believe, after just the design of a few animals, that mindless random chance with all these animals and all these design was put into them from one little speck big as a pencil and evolved into what we have today. It just doesn't make much sense when you look at the design of everything. Whenever you look at the design around your life, you can look at the battery, flashlights, computers, cell phones. I mean, you can just think of all the many things that design is in today. Well, why can't we come to the conclusion that same design is also in the animals, in people, in the earth, in the universe? Which is easier to believe? There was a Big Bang. I'm not sure where the substances came from, but they banged together, and they did it. And over millions and millions of years, evolution took place, and there's no evidence of any of this happening today, but that's what happened. Well, that's just absurd. Why can't we believe that God created all things? Look at Colossians 1:16 and 17. It says, "For in him were all things created in the heavens and upon the earth, things visible and things invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities or powers, all things have been created through him and unto him, and he is before all things, and in him all things consist." That's a lot easier to believe than these other theories about having a big bang and all these things happening by chance and coming to this design that we have today. I saw this a little bit this morning, and when you think about this this first verse in the Bible, there was, in 1882, there was an evolutionary called Herbert Spencer. And he was a philosopher, a biologist, a sociologist, prominent classical liberal political theorist of the Victorian era. But this is what he said, is that you had to have each one of these things for something to happen. It says, you can't segregate all these. And then into space, time, matter, motion, and force. So these 5 things have to be there for things to be created. Well, look in the very first verse in the Bible. You have in the beginning, which is time. You have God, which is force. He was able to start this creation. He created. You can see the energy there. You can see the heavens, the space, and the earth matter. All of the things were written. These things that to create anything, you have to have time. You have to have a person that designed it or created it. You have to have energy. I'm going to put energy into building a computer or whatever I might be building. And I have to have screws or system boards or whatever it is to build a computer. Well, the same thing happened with the earth, the heavens and the earth. Look in verse 1. It says, in the beginning, which we kind of read right there, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth was waste and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And we can read the rest of Genesis 1:1. God said, He spoke, and it became a being. You see the energy. Where was the energy from? The energy came from God speaking. And we see in John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God, and all things were made through Him, and without Him was not anything made that has been made. Everything was made through God. And so when you think about this design, when you think about God creating this earth and this universe, it only comes to mind, who created me? Well, what does this God expect from me that created me? Is there something He expects from me? When you look at Romans 5 and verse 8, it says, but God demonstrated His own love toward us, that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Remember Christ? He was God. He was part of the creation. He came here on this earth and demonstrated how much He loves us, how much God loves us, our Creator. He loves us so much that He gave us a way to be forgiven of our sins. He gave us a way to be with Him later on in life. Look at Romans 1 and verse 28. It says, why do people not want to believe, or why do they not believe that God exists? Well, it's because they don't want to answer to Him. They don't want to believe that God is going to require something of them. People want to do what they want to do, when they want to do it, and where they want to do it. And they don't want somebody telling them what to do. Well, look in Romans 1:28. It says, and even as they refused to have God in their knowledge, what did they do? God gave them up into a reprobate mind to do those things which are not fitting. They doing whatever they want to do, being filled with all unrighteousness, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, malignity, whisperers, backbiters, hateful to God, insolent, haughty, boastful, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, without understanding, covenant breakers, without natural affection, unmerciful. I mean, when you read these things and you see people, as we get rid of God out of the schools, as we get rid of, as we don't teach our children that God exists, this is what they grow up to be. They grow up to be this kind of person that don't believe in God, that don't want to have God in their knowledge. Richard Dawkins said it is almost as if the human brain were specifically designed to misunderstand Darwinism and to find it hard to believe. Well, it is hard to believe because it's absurd when you think about what they want you to believe, that this earth had evolved. And you can just look at the design, and there's many other things that you can look at. The simple fact is, people do not accept evolution because it is the logical thing to do. Rather, many believe it because they have a vested interest in not wanting to acknowledge the Creator. So why do they not want to believe? Why do they not want to follow the Creator? Because they don't want to acknowledge Him. They don't want to, as we just read, they don't want to believe that they have to do something that He exists. So, does God exist? I think by looking at the design of the so many different things that exist here on this earth, that it proves that He does. You can look at the whale and the dragonfly and the glowworms and just every animal. Look at the design of it. Think of the design in every single animal, in designing us, just in our eyes, just in our, amazing. Just amazing. So if we believe God does exist, what does He expect of me? Well, I have to believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. I have to confess that Jesus is the Son of God, and I have to repent of my sins, and I have to be baptized for the remission of my sins and have my sins washed away. That's what He expects from me, and He asks us to live as He does and live an obedient life. If you have a need today, if you need the prayers of the church, or maybe you want to be baptized and be added to the church and have your sins washed away, whatever your need is, if you come as we stand and as we sing.